this is a great place to get started. Now, to motivate the Sharpe ratio, we're going to first have to talk about why investing is not only about returns, why it can't just be about percent returns, which might be counterintuitive. In order to illustrate this point, we're going to start with an example. Here are two investments, green and black. They both returned exactly the same amount. They both returned 40%. The question is, which is better? Now, in order to answer this, obviously we can't just look at percent returns because they're the same between the two. So we have to look at something that's different. One thing that's different between the two is the path that each took to reach that 40%. If you look at green, the path is pretty steady. In comparison, black wiggles around and moves around a lot more, right? And in particular has this steep up and down right in the middle here. You probably already intuitively know that these wiggles that black has are bad. Here are a few reasons why. The first reason the wiggles are bad is that it makes black a lot more painful to hold. Sure, sometimes it is beating green, right? But other times it underperforms by a lot. And in particular, it would be incredibly scary to be all the way down here, not knowing if and when you'll ever recover your investment. From basic trading psychology, we know that these losses are going to loom larger than any gains and make the holding experience a lot more painful for black. The second reason the wiggles are bad is it gives us less confidence in black going forward, which makes us not really want to invest in it, right? After wiggling around so much, doesn't it seem like black could really do anything, whereas green seems like it would make steady gains? The third reason the wiggles are bad is because of liquidity. Liquidity. What happens if we suddenly needed cash? Black wiggles around so much that we could be down when we need the money and we would be forced to close the position at a loss. By now, many will recognize that the wiggles here actually represents risk, and we can answer our initial question a lot more directly. Black is a worse investment than green despite having returned the same because it took on a lot more risk to get that return. We need a performance metric that reflects this because simple percentage returns clearly fails. The first thing we have to do in order to derive this new metric is to quantify risk. Our risk metric should capture this intuition that if the returns graph wiggles a lot like black, there's a lot more uncertainty, pain, or luck involved, and therefore it's a riskier investment. One of the simplest and most common ways of doing this is by calculating the standard deviation of returns, also known as volatility, denoted by sigma. The formula for volatility is given here. In words, it computes the average of the square deviations from the mean return. That's quite a mouthful. I think it's a lot easier to understand volatility visually. The graph here represents the average return in the formula, R average, by this orange trend line, and it represents the RT in the formula by the blue curve, which is the actual investment, of course. What volatility measures is deviations from this trend line, represented by these red arrows. In other words, it's precisely trying to measure the wiggles in the graph that we want to capture. All right, now that we have our risk metric, we're ready to introduce